Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Door to Door. It's the Library Love Fest team coming to you from various ports in the storm. I'm Virginia Stanley, joined by
Chris Connolly here. Great to see you all.
and
Lainey Mays. Hello.
and we have special. I'm wearing plaid because I feel that the books that we're talking about today are very plaid-y. That they give you that warm, cozy feeling, and they're lovely, lovely reads. And we can't wait to get into it. So we're going to start with Andrew Graff, author of Raft of Stars, and then we will have Willy Vlautin out to talk to you about his forthcoming book. But we'll start first. Chris, I'm going to lob it over to you.
Excellent. Well, it's my honor to introduce Andrew. Many of you librarians watching already know about Raft of Stars. It's coming in March. It's our lead read pick for winter 2021. Our lead read is a sales initiative where the sales staff every season chooses one special book that we think has a chance for critical and commercial success. And this wonderful instant classic, I think, checks all of those boxes. We're so excited to have Andrew on. I just want to read a quick review. This is a starred review from Barbara Hofert with Library Journal. The characters are expertly drawn in their shifting relationships, both an engaging adventure and a profound reflection on human bonding, what it means to be a man and a good one, and the importance of persevering. Highly recommended whether you want literate thrills or thoughtful, affirming mediation. And I think that human bonding, we talked about this earlier, Andy, I think that's such an important part of this book. It's such a warm, adventurous read, but I think it's just the human element of this book just jumps from the page. So I so appreciate you coming on the program. I'm just going to read your bio really quickly. You grew up fishing, hiking, and hunting in Wisconsin's northwards, where this book actually takes place. After a tour of duty in Afghanistan, you earned an MFA from the University of Iowa. You live in Ohio and you teach at Wittenberg University. So again, thank you for joining us today, Andy.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Lainey. Thank you, librarians. Much love to you during this day. So yeah, Raft of Stars, I just wanted to maybe talk a little bit about an overview of the plot, and then I'd like to read a very brief segment, and then I just want to answer questions and have a conversation. So the book, as you mentioned, takes place up in northern Wisconsin in the North Woods, the border between Wisconsin and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And it takes off quickly. The book is about two boys nicknamed Bread and Fish who are forced to flee off into the wilderness downriver of Mishicot Forest in the fictional Maragami County. The book is also about the two groups of adults who pursue them downriver. The two groups of adults, one is comprised of one of the boys' grandfathers. His name is Teddy. He's kind of this woods-wise Korean War vet, and he's accompanied on horseback by Cal, who is an interim county sheriff, and he's really questioning his life in law enforcement. The other group of adults that pursues them downstream is comprised of one of the boys' mothers, Miranda, who is filled with a very fierce sort of faith. She's like a hard canoeing, hard cussing Pentecostal. And she's one of my favorite characters in the novel. She's accompanied by Tiffany, who is the local gas station attendant. And she's an aspiring poet with purple hair. So the boys are headed downstream, running towards something and away from something. They're being pursued by these adults. And I think one of the central questions that the book asks, and it's a question that all the characters ask in their own ways, and it's a question that I ask, for my entire life, and in particularly the last year, and it's the question of am I going to be okay? Am I going to make it? And so in this book about people literally and figuratively lost in a forest, they're all going towards the river's end together, and they eventually find their answers. I think it's a book that takes care of the reader's heart by the story's end. I admire books that take care of me, and I think Raft of Stars, I hope Raft of Stars is one of those as well. So if I could, I just wanted to read 2 paragraphs. Yes, takes about 2 minutes or so, kind of give you a flavor for this is from page 3. And I think it's an excerpt that kind of captures the spirit of this story, at least in the early part. So here goes, page 3. Both boys were covered in cornfield dust up to their armpits from gathering the turtles. And the turtles themselves were white with it, like they'd been shook up in a bag of frying flour Fish's mom used to batter chicken halves. It was a dry spring. The tractors that dragged the soil smooth last week raised dust clouds that hung in the air for hours. A frigid winter with too much snow, and now a spring without rain. The winter was hard on the wildlife. When what snow there was first melted, the boys found 3 deer lying dead in the woods beneath a cedar tree, eyes milky and open. It looked as if the animals had grown too tired of the cold and decided to lie down for a while, amazed that a winter so cold could exist even this far north. Poor damn things, Fish had said, after hesitantly prodding one with a stick, to prove that death didn't bother him. On the opposite side of the asphalt road, the ditch met marsh water. The water was cold and dark with silt, and the wet bank seeped into the toes of the boys' shoes as they squatted down to free the snappers. As they lowered each leathery creature into the water, the turtles seemed awakened by it. The way the dust washed away, the suddenness of submersion. The turtles craned their little heads forward and waved their legs and swam away into the silt and water. They were like pigeons, taking flight in pairs from the roof of Fish's grandpa's barn, aimless and erratic, surprised. So I chose this passage as a way to introduce the book for 2 reasons. One, this is the opening scene before the boys themselves take flight, aimless, erratic, and surprised as they are forced to flee into the wilderness. And also that question, or that line of poor damn things, is a line that Fish's grandfather likes to say about a lot of things in life. The world is filled with poor damn things. I think that one of those questions of, are we going to make it? Are we going to be okay? Deals with that. Am I just a poor damn thing, or do I have agency? Can I fight? When do I come to the end of myself? When I get to the end of myself, will the wilderness take care of me? These are the questions that I had fun writing about and thinking about with Raft of Stars.
I love that. And, it's interesting with, the nature of this book. I mean, the woods are such a central, almost like a character of the book in and of themselves. Can you talk about your own history growing up in this area and kind of what drew you towards the woods and how you kind of returned and decided to write a book set in that area?
Yeah. It's home and I love it. I grew up on the end of a dead end road in the township of a village of like 1,900 people, way up on the northern border of Wisconsin. And I had a barn and I had silos to light off firecrackers inside of, and I had a Siberian husky and 2 brothers, and I loved it. And I had a river too. The river is very important. We grew up hiking and fishing on the Menominee River. And there's actually, I put a brief, if anyone's interested, I put a brief video on my website about this site of inspiration, kind of shows the rapids and things like that I was thinking about. I started writing I started writing Raft of Stars when I moved back home after the Air Force and after, studying as an undergrad and a grad student. And I moved back home for my first teaching job. And my wife and I lived near the Peshtigo River at that time. And it was winter and I was starting fires in the wood stove in the basement. And that's when I wrote the first few lines of Raft of Stars. And it was a time in my life, I think, when I felt home for the first time in a very long time. And I was excited and am excited to share that part of the world with people.
Yeah, that's excellent. And you've had such an interesting past. You left obviously Wisconsin. You're a veteran. You were in Afghanistan. Could you talk about kind of like what writing meant to you and how you kind of came to decide to write in the first place? Was that something you were always drawn towards? Now, how did those experiences shape, you as a writer?
Well, I was always a reader and always a chronic daydreamer, and now I teach creative writing, and I always not always, but I often will joke with my writing classes that I know something about your childhood, all of you, the type of folks who end up in a creative writing class. And that thing is this, that oftentimes your play as a child looked like you sitting alone behind the lilac bush in the corner of the yard, just staring, just imagining the story, So I grew up, and I was the youngest of three brothers, and I spent a lot of time alone in the woods and in the barns and reading and thinking. So that never left. And then I didn't become serious about writing until I was an undergraduate at Lawrence University. And I had a great prof, writer David McGlynn, who just encouraged my early, really awkward attempts. And I stuck with it. I found something that I like to do. So.
Excellent. And are there any specific authors? Because obviously Huck Finn is going to come to people's minds. Are there other writers or stories that kind of inspired you or that you were thinking about when you started writing Raft of Stars?
Yeah, well, Huck Finn definitely, like boys experiencing a new kind of freedom and a new kind of fear alone on a river, right? But more than that, I think I was influenced by the types of books, and I mentioned this, that kind of like take care of the reader, that can leave us in a space where we can feel hopeful when we close the paragraphs. I went through a stage where I thought that in order to make art, you had to be dark and moody because that was pure, and I was being very influenced by modernism at the time, of course. And there's truth in that, like those are valid projects, right? But for me, I was like, wow, there's more to this story too, because I also just want to be happy. I want to believe in reconciliation and hope, and that joy is also a part of the human experience. So I think when I was writing Raft of Stars, I wasn't thinking about particular stories that influenced me, but I was trying to create something that maybe like a whole family could pass around a lake house together. And I think Raft of Stars, I hope Raft of Stars is a book that is serious enough to kind of satisfy adult readers, but personally I feel it's something I can give to my grandmother or my nephew, and no one's gonna be angry at me. So
excellent. And so I think we mentioned you are a father yourself. Have you done a family reading of Raft of Stars with your kids?
Not yet, because my kids are young. We have young children, like 3 and 5 and stuff like that. So I'm like, I don't know if it's 5-year-old appropriate. It's not a bedtime story about, there's an abusive father and things like that in it. So not yet. Maybe someday we'll have a good campfire.
Again, it's a classic, so it'll be there waiting whenever they're ready. So yeah. I'm really excited about that. Virginia and Lainey, should I go into librarian questions? We have so much love on Facebook for this book. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, let's do it. I just wanted to just a couple things before we do that. One of the things that is being tossed around is that this is an instant classic for fans of Jane Smiley and Kitchens of the Great Midwest. And there's a fabulous quote from Richard Russo, which I just want to read before we go on, because the LJ quote from Barbara is amazing. But I also love this one. This is what Richard Russo, author of Empire Falls and Chances Are, says. I had no idea people wrote books like Andrew J. Graff's Raft of Stars anymore. A rousing adventure yarn full of danger and heart and humor and characters worth worrying about. It's as if, after observing the deplorable state we're all in right now, the author took it upon himself to raise our collective spirits. Bravo. Thanks.
That one made me cry. I was
Make me
like,
cry too.
man, first off, Richard Russo read it, and then second off, he liked it. So it's wonderful. And the whole thing has been wonderful. I've been working and failing at getting a novel out there for well over a decade now. I have sock drawer manuscripts that all have their own stories, and they're a part of the process. But man, I just want to say thanks to you and to librarians and to Richard Russo's and to Echo and to agents and everyone who read it and enjoyed it, because it's been a real bright spot for me this past year. And who couldn't use a bright spot this past year, right? But I've just been so thankful. It's been such a thrill to see people respond to it in such a positive way.
Well, it's been a bright spot for all of us too. I mean, Chris Laney and I are all on the Lead Read committee. And I have to say that this book was just, when you talk about like, you're reaching back and you're speaking to anybody who's sitting, could go back to their childhood and sit in a lilac bush. Hello, I'm with you. There's a lot of people doing that. I mean, you are really there. And these children that you've gotten into their mind. It's a beautiful book, and it really spoke to so many of us. So congratulations on the book and for it becoming, being selected as the lead read. And it is with great reason. So I'll leave it there, and we'll go to the questions of the folks that are watching.
Let's see. So here's one. So our friend Jennifer Winberry says, most of your characters are searching for something. Who do you think will find it, and for whom do you have the most hope?
For the characters, which character will find it? Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I think there was originally a 19th chapter to this novel, like a different end game where all things were summed up, and I took all the characters a year into the future. So I have my ideas of what they might find and how they end up. But I think editors and other readers very wisely said, like, maybe a bit too much of a bow tie, right? Let's just let it all kind of point toward wellness and let people have fun with it in their own way. I think for me, what all those characters are searching for and what they find is sort of their best self. And in order to find their best self, they have to shed something. The character Fish lost his own father and lives in a very scary reality because of that. And he has to shed a lot of fear in order to come through at the end for his friend and others. Cal, the sheriff, has this ego identity of, I'm a cop, and he never really wanted to be one, right? He was doing it to please Dad and please others, and it worked for him, and that's crumbling and it falls off. And when it does, when he sheds, he's able to come through well for others. And I think Tiffany, the other point of view character, goes through a similar process of having to break through something and having to let something fall off in order to show up with their true self. So I think maybe that's how I would sum it. I think they're looking out, searching for their true self. I think all of them find it in a way.
And since you've just went through all of the characters, I was wondering, is there any one of those characters? They have very different experiences, and you're writing from different genders and different ages. And was there anyone that came particularly more fun or more easy to write, or someone you related to?
Yeah, they're like, every one of the point of view characters is a definite part of myself. The childhood of Fish, the rivers and the barns and the forests, that's very much my childhood. When I first started writing the book, I started writing it from Bread's perspective, actually. But then as I pushed a little bit, a chapter or two into that territory, and he's the one with an abusive father, and that story, like, is not mine to tell, really. And I thought, I think I think other books need to be written to tell Bread's story, and someone else can tell that better. But I've definitely been in the shoes of Fish, like just on the periphery of that life. So I felt comfortable writing that. Tiffany is a purple-haired gas station attendant in a small town. She wants to be a poet, you know? I've grown up in small towns my whole life. I currently live in a village, and I've always kind of had the poet part of me, you know. I wasn't necessarily a star on the small town football team, you know what I'm saying? I wanted to daydream. So, and then Cal is a guy in his mid-30s who's worked really hard to kind of create his vessel, his career, and then is in that stage where he is doubting it and saying, oh, I'm not sure. Did I just do this because people said I was good at it, or you know what I mean? So I definitely see a part of myself in all those characters, and I think others can too.
Yeah, I think readers can too. We have a question with lots of book club love that, you know, this is perfect for book clubs. Maureen Roberts wants to know why, it sounds like a classic story, why set in 1994?
Thanks, Maureen, and thanks book clubs. And please invite me to your book clubs. I want to Zoom and chat with you if that would be fun. I would have fun. 1994 was a space that I knew well. You know, when I mentioned that I pulled back from writing from Bread's point of view because I hadn't experienced that life of that child, right? I remember something Jane Smiley said when she came and gave a talk at the Iowa Writers Workshop once, and I'm paraphrasing very sloppily, but she was basically saying, like, you got to find your territory, you know? It's not that we can't research and write about something that we don't know or haven't experienced. We can, but there's also a sense of, you know, this story and this place, like this one, this is mine, you know? And I think, you know, I was like, yeah, 1994 Northwoods, right? That's my story. That's where I grew up. That's what I love. And also, as a quick aside, it was pre-cell phone, right? Like one cell phone would ruin the entire plot of this novel, right? Like, dear boys, where are you? Oh, okay, coming home, mom. That, you know, so 1994 provided a good lack of technology.
Cell reception can't be too great in the Northwoods, so let's just say that.
Right. You can still work around it, yeah.
That's excellent. Let's see here. Again, just so much love. People just appreciate the book.
Did we get Katie Stover's question?
No, if you want, do you have it there in front of you?
I do. It says, Katie Stover from Kansas City. She says, those are great themes for book clubs. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to make it? How do the characters define what is okay? How do you know when you've made it?
Right. When that question, when I learn how to answer that question, I'll write another book, you know, if someone can tell me. I think that for me, one of the major balancing acts in the text that has to do with, am I going to be okay and am I going to make it, is the balance between agency and acquiescence. There's times when the boys say, nope, like, I am the change being sent. That's a realization that occurs in Fish's mind that actually kicks the story off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they come to the ends of themselves when that agency, it goes flat, it becomes futile. I cannot fight that river anymore. There are circumstances outside of my control. And that's where I think the wilderness itself, the very thing that threatens them, is the thing that eventually provides and takes care of them, right? And that for me is kind of explored in some of those later scenes that take place near the rivers, and some of those moments that may seem a bit a bit mystical, something outside the self showing up and saying, yes, you're going to make it. That's as close as I can get to an answer of what does it mean. But
I think that's perfect. Love the honesty. Do we have more questions, you guys? A few more minutes.
Let's see here. So Todd Kruger was very taken by Tiffany. I think so many of us were. I'm not sure if you're allowed to say this, but was there a particular inspiration in your life for her?
You know, well, as I said, you know, part of her is my own life and many of our lives, right? But I like I said, I grew up in these small towns, and I grew up around small town gas stations, and they are the type of places where you can walk into a door and the bell rings and the conversation picks up where it left off, and there's a group of old men by the coffee cups having a conversation, and then there's this person, you know, a Tiffany perhaps, right, who's bantering with them. So yeah, it was definitely based upon a reality that I experienced. You know, I was recently driving across Ohio, and I stopped in a small town. I almost asked if I could take a photo with this person, but it was a complete stranger, and I thought it would be really awkward. But I walked into this, man, it was a village sort of town, just a couple of stores and with a gas station in the cornfield. And I walk in and I look at the counter and I say to myself, oh, Tiffany. There was a woman in her mid-20s with bright purple hair working at this gas station. I just thought, oh, I almost turned back and said, can I please take a photo? But I thought that would seem really odd, you know? Like, hey, I wrote a book and you're in it. Do you want to take a picture with me? I wouldn't, you know?
Maybe a return trip with a copy of the book.
Yeah, it needs to be further developed.
Yeah. She'd be like, sure, you did.
Exactly.
Where's my part? Yeah. Well, we have time maybe for one more, and then we're going to bring on Mr. Vlautin. So what do we got, guys?
Kim McGee asks, excuse me, this is Jana Lockhart. She asked if your experience in the military influenced the book or your writing at all.
I think it did. You know, particularly the parts of Fish's interaction with his father, and looking at, you know, the effects of a dad going on deployment, and the effects that has on a family, or any parent, anyone going on a deployment. In Fish's case, it's his father. And I think my experience in the military probably helped me see the realities of that. You know, I wasn't a military child, so I didn't experience it from that side. But I do remember, you know, being in Kandahar, Afghanistan, talking to, you know, sergeants who were older than I was. I was 19 years old. I was tied down by nothing but my love of Wisconsin, you know? But there were these people who were further along in life, and they had families back home, and they would do these staticky satellite calls once every week or so with family. And then I would hear them talk about it and kind of decompress afterward in the dark beneath the netting under a tent. And I just thought, oh yeah, that's tough. That's really tough. So it may have helped me write those parts better.
I see that Chris, maybe, or Lainey had just posted your behind the book piece, which is absolutely beautiful. So anybody who wants to check this out, it's on Edelweiss, and it's Andy's behind the book piece, which reads like poetry. It's just so beautiful. So quick question from Vicky Nesting. She wants to know, would this be a good book to give to fans of This Tender Land by William Hent Kruger?
I've heard readers comparing it to This Tender Land, and I read that book this year. I thought, yeah, I think it does read in a similar way. I think in terms of register, when I was talking about like how heavy and how dark or how light is the story emotionally, I think it lands in a similar space there as well. I loved this Tenderland. I thought it was a marvelous book.
Well, we think your book is marvelous.
Thanks.
And we think you're marvelous.
Think you're marvelous.
Go on. All right. We could do this forever, but it's half an hour and we need to put you in the virtual, we're putting Andy in the virtual green room.
Okay.
Virtual rutabaga.
Thank you so much again. Thanks to everyone watching. I appreciate it.
Congratulations.
See you in a little
on
bit,
this.
Andy.
It's beautiful, and so many people are so excited about it. So Raft of Stars, and you'll come back in a little bit after we speak with Mr. Willy Vlautin. Okay. Bye-bye, Andy. Hello, Willy. What's that? What is that music? What is that? We can't hear you.
Hello?
Lainey, you're muted. Okay. Lainey, you're still muted.
Yeah, we'll do it later. No big deal.
Okay. Hi, Willy.
Hello. How'd it
How
go?
are you?
I was scared to watch because I'm on a kind of a funky internet thing and I didn't want to mess with any of the mojo that I got going right now.
It worked.
Good.
Love when it works.
Jesus, me too.
Gosh. Willy Vlautin. Willy Vlautin, we're so excited to have you. It was so exciting to have Andy Raft to talk about his debut, and you are here to talk about your latest book with all of us, and we are such fans of this book as we are of all of your books. You know what, we could just make this one great big love fest because Chris and Lainey and I are just gaga over you. You guys want to chime? You guys want to spread the love?
As we were talking before we went live, Willy, I love your work when I'm not really angry at you at the same time, because it's such beautiful writing. And, you know, at times it is heartbreaking and hard to read, but the characters are so unforgettable and written with such care. And they're just people you don't see on page enough. And I absolutely love it. I love every single one of your books. I don't think I've read a single author's backlist in its entirety, like in the span of a week and a half or so, something like that. And that's the power of your book. I feel like anytime I give someone your book, it's just instant love. So
Thank you. You just cheered me up.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I led with the, the aggressiveness. I didn't mean to. I love your work. So
you know, look, I'm I never think the books are as intense or as sad as they are when I start them. And I always think, even with The Night Always Comes, I started out thinking, oh, it's not going to be, I don't want an intense one this time. But that's just what's in my heart, I guess.
Well, Willy, you know, I echo everything that Chris says. And it's funny because I was speaking with a former colleague, Annie Mazes, who is now at Workman, and she said, oh, I need the latest one, because everybody who reads you just goes down the Willy Vlautin rabbit hole and reads it, because readers just cannot get enough of your characters, because they're unforgettable, and they reside in the hearts of readers. You are magical. And let's start with you.
You better watch out. I'm going to start liking myself, and then I'll be writing James Bond books. So.
Oh God, that's the last thing I can see you doing. Okay, Willy, why don't you tell us a little bit your newest book? Wow, that jacket, The Night Always Comes, is it's haunting, and it has a fantastic woman at its center, a spirited woman who, as with all of your characters, you just root for, and you want her to make it. And I'm going to stop babbling and turn it to you. Let everybody know what you want them to know about this book.
Well, I mean, it started. Well, I guess I should say first, I rent an office in a part of Portland called St. John's, and it's like one of the last old working class parts of town. And I've been here 13 years. It's like a Sam Spade detective agency office. It's and I look out at a bar that opens up at 7 a.m. So it's like I'm the luckiest man in the world. In the last 7 years, though, I've watched, half the businesses in the neighborhood close. The old mom and pop stores were getting forced out because landlords suddenly were doubling rents. Or if the mom and pop places own their property, they were cashing out because commercial real estate was going through the roof, and housing prices quadrupled in the last 15 years. And right now I can look out the window, and just in the last few months, there's homeless tents, guys living on the street, like on a main street. And it just made me think, it started making me think about the night always comes, and the ideas behind it. And also a quote from our president, and he once said, the point is you can't be too greedy. And so when I started working on the novel, I wanted it set in this area, and I wanted it intense. So set over the course of a couple of days around Lynette, a 30-year-old woman, a working class woman that's, got her dents and scars to her, but she's desperately trying to scrape together enough money to buy the rental property for the home that she's lived in with her on and off with her mother and her developmentally disabled brother. And their struggles of trying to stay in the neighborhood as it gentrifies. As you know, my books, my interest is in working class themes, and I wanted this one to talk about, gentrification and how working class people can afford a $300,000, $400,000 house that's 100 years old, and back then was built as affordable housing. So not mansions we're talking about. We're talking about, 2-bedroom house with 1 bathroom kind of place. So that's what got me going down the rabbit hole with Lynette and her family.
And so, because we've talked, when we interviewed you back for Don't Skip Out on Me, I think it was 2018. Viewers who don't know, you're obviously a very accomplished musician, and you met. Stop it, you are, and so you were the founding member of Richmond Fontaine and the Delines, and most of your books, you say, start as a song, and I'm curious if that holds true for this book as well. Did this book start as a song for you?
It started as a couple older songs. I'd been thinking about this story for a while, and then as the story, what happens a lot is when I start editing it, because the only gift I have is I edit and I edit and I edit, because I'm not that smart, but I'm tenacious, I guess. And so when I'm editing, there'll be, I'll start really diving deep into the story, and then I usually write songs based on the characters, because I start getting so emotionally invested in them. And so with my last book, Don't Skip Out on Me, it was a whole record. And this one, my band, the Delines, we're going to do a record later in the year that's all instrumentals about it. But for Lynette, I only wrote her one tune. For the main character, I just wrote her one little, less than 2-minute long song. Yeah.
And not to spoil anything, but we might be hearing more about this song, or hearing the song itself later, correct? Is that?
Yeah, man. I'll give it a shot. Give it a shot.
Give it a shot. Well, let's back up for 1 second, can we? Because I don't want to. Just a little bit of background work. This is your 6th book. So you started with The Motel Life, and then Northline, and Lean on Pete, The Free, and Don't Skip Out on Me, which was that was a finalist for the Penn Faulkner Award. It was an ALA notable book. It was shortlisted for the lead read, the HarperCollins Initiative, and it was the book that I think I don't know, Chris Laney and I went through a box of Kleenex on that bad boy, because it's a tough one, but they're so beautiful. All of your books, as you say, they sort of speak to the just sort of the Joe Everyman, but people who are as Chris said, and I like what you said, Chris. There should be more books. There don't need to be more books, because you have your books. But you're representing these people that are getting by, and sometimes they succeed and sometimes they don't, and that's life. And they're just so authentic. I guess that's why they hit us so hard, and everybody who reads them, because they are so authentic. And then this I have to say, Don't Skip Out on Me and the soundtrack that accompanies that book is haunting. It's just so beautiful.
Oh, thank you very much. I think, as a kid, I mean, I did grow up when John Steinbeck was the king of public school. And so I read all his major works by the time I was 15. And also I was a huge fan of bands like the Jam and the Clash, these like kind of political working class bands. And I do remember at a very young age, at like 13 or 14, saying, I really wanted to write stories about people like my mom, like my mom was a single working mom who struggled with her job, sexually harassed for years at her job. And I knew back then I wanted to write those kind of stories just because they made me, when I found those stories for myself, it made me feel less alone in the world. It made me feel way less lonely when I could find a story that I could really relate to, and a song that I could relate to. So from that age, I really drank the Kool-Aid that I wanted to write stories about the things around me and the people around me, because I was often so lonely and so just kind of a little dented and beat up that having a story that would hold my hand maybe or be a little saint to me saved me. So that's kind of why I did that.
That's beautiful. Sweet. I get it. I totally get it. We have, Chris Laney, do you want to read some of the quotes that some of the raves that have come in, these beautiful reviews for Willy's latest?
I'm pulling them up now. There's a lot. Starred reviews. The starred reviews don't get old, do they, Willy? Because you always get a bunch of starred reviews. Like it's like clockwork, and it's always amazing. I love to see it.
I mean, I look at it as just so lucky. You're always so scared that I love writing novels. I guess I'll say this. I love writing novels so much. So any good review, I just feel like I dodged a bullet of having to get a real job. That's just definitely the way I look at it. So anytime anything nice happens to my books, I'm just so relieved, because I'm like, well, maybe they'll take my next one.
I think you can bet on it. I'm going to read 2 starred reviews. We have one from Publishers Weekly. This gritty page turner sings with pitch perfect prose, and Lynette's desperation is palpable. Vlautin has achieved a brilliant synthesis of Raymond Carver and Jim Thompson. Those 2 names you don't mind being compared to?
I grew up, it was reading Carver that, I guess I was 17, 18, and I was just in bands, and I was really intimidated by fiction because I wasn't a very good student, and I had never done anything. I lived with my mother and my brother, and I was unremarkable in all regards. And then when I read Carver, I was like, he wrote about failed men, and where the women carried on their back the family, and they carried on their backs a drunken bum of a man a lot of the times. And I understood those stories. And so, yeah, I really like Carver. And, in my early 20s, I was a big Jim Thompson fan as well. So, yeah, I like that. Anytime you get compared to like cool guys, you're like, really? Like, you feel lucky. It's just like, it's like finding $10 on the street. You're like, man, oh man.
Excellent. I'm going to read one more star review, this time from Library Journal. The story resonates with characters we come to feel we know, and dialogue that is so natural we hear it, not just read it. Lynette may be, as her mother says, just born to fail, but in spite of everything that has gone wrong for her, in the end, she is not defeated. This is literary art that will keep readers in their seats until the last page. Not bad at all. And I just want to talk about kind of the concept of perseverance, and that's especially for someone like Lynette, where everything that's happened to her, whether it's mostly not self-imposed, but she has this history, and there's this sense of self-forgiveness that she has to kind of grapple with. What was it like writing from Lynette's point of view? What was it like spending time with her as a person, as a character?
Well, what I'm finding out with say like Don't Skip Out on Me and Horace, my last book, and then with Lynette is because I edit so much, you kind of start peeling away at them like you do yourself as you get older. You start realizing, oh, this is a scar here, this is a dent here. And with Lynette, I think the interesting thing I really discovered about her is that she's been basically kind of a servant to her mother. Because she has a developmentally disabled brother, and they are so hand to mouth financially, that she's been kind of like an indentured servant her whole life. And so she just gives and gives. And I think her only power as a kid, and the problem she's grappling with is in adulthood, is anger is the only way she can control the situation or stand up for herself. She gives and gives and gives until she can't give anymore, and then she explodes. And I think when we meet her, she's overcoming that, and now she's trying to make amends in her own way for some of the damage she's done, even though the damage isn't really her fault. It's life, It's like she's got her dents, and now she has to undent them as much as she can or accept them. And we kind of meet her there as this person who's trying desperately to tell her mother, hey, look, this city's changing. We are not meant to be owners of a home in this framework of Portland or these big cities that are gentrifying so fast. So we better do something fast so we can keep this house. And the mother is like, she's tired by this point. She's like, look, I've never made money. I've always been kind of a loser. Her mother's starting to give up, and Lynette's trying to, make up for who she is and guide the family. And it's, the sad thing about families is there's a lot of like knocking people out by their knees when they're trying to help you actually. So there's a lot of like deep seated family stuff going on.
I love the dent in the cans. I love that analogy. That's beautiful. And I think, you're with Lynette the whole time, and she's like trying to get this foothold on something that in a world that's not really built for her in some ways or meant for her. And I just thought it was so beautiful. And I think to Virginia's point, that's why you care so much, like you're rooting for her so much, because she's just a normal person trying to fight her way out in those everyday situations. And it's so beautiful. We have a librarian quote, Kim McGee, who is watching, and I think she puts what we're all feeling, all three of us are feeling, in just a few sentences. So, if you're new to Willy Vlautin, this will make you a fan for life, and if you're already a fan, you'll be looking for someone to pass the book to the minute you finish it. His succinct prose aims for the heart, and the characters stay in your soul.
Jesus. That was nice. I am starting to like myself, or at least I got a couple hours where I'm going to be walking around with my head up today.
Well, with good reason, sir. We have so many questions to get to. Should we dive in or do the song?
Oh, what do you just tell me what to do? I can read, I can play a song.
Why don't you read first? You're going to read a little section from the book, get him even more hooked.
Okay. This is just a conversation between Lynette and her mother, and like family members. It's loaded and goes sideways sometimes. And this is Lynette speaking. Look, I know you've had it rough, said Lynette, but right now you should just go to bed. We're both tired and you're drunk. Her mother shook her head. I'm not drunk. I know what I'm saying. So will you listen to me? Will you really listen? I'm listening, said Lynette. Last month, Mona and I drove around downtown near where your bakery is, the Pearl District. When I was your age, no one went to that part of town. It was all empty buildings and bums and guys shooting up. Now, as you know, it's all fancy buildings and skinny people who look like they're in magazines. I don't know where they all come from, but they sure are coming. And then all you do is cross another street and there's homeless people camping everywhere. They're coming too. You can't drive around Portland without seeing 100 tents. People living in tents. Are they all on drugs? Are there that many people who are crazy and on drugs? I used to always ask myself, why would a man in his 20s want to live on the street when he could work? I mean, my God, what's happening? For a long time, I didn't understand it. Why? Why would they live that way? It seems so awful, so miserable. But you know, now I'm thinking, I'm starting to understand. The answer is, why not? Why should they bust their asses all day when they know no matter what they do, they'll never get ahead? And why should they pay $300,000 for a fallen down shack when they don't have to? So there we are, me and Mona, driving around downtown. We go up Broadway and then 11th Street and then Front Street and every place in between. The whole time, we're just wondering, who can afford to live in these fancy new high rises? And where do they get the money to eat in all these new restaurants? I mean, how do you pay $300 for a pair of shoes or $5,000 for a couch? For the life of me, I just don't understand where so many people get their money. And what am I supposed to do? Go to college? Learn about computers? I'm old, so I guess I'm what you'd call a loser. Jesus, I'm a loser. But knowing it doesn't change anything. She stopped, lit a cigarette, and took a long drag from it. Her eyes were wild and she was sweating, even though the room was barely 60. Why don't you just go to sleep, said Lynette. I don't want to go to sleep, her mother said, and put the cigarette in her ashtray. I'm just trying to tell you the way it is. She took another drink and went on. You say you have almost $100,000. Well, I have my ideas on how you got the money, and I'm pretty sure my ideas are the truth. But I'm not judging. Why should I? That's just
so good and hard and sad, but also, you know,
Real.
in a way, this conversation opens things up for our dear Lynette, and there's something to that. But just, I can't imagine writing that. That's why you are Willy Vlautin. It's just so hard and heartbreaking, and again, just it rings so true. So thank you for that.
Oh, you know, I think a lot of times, I guess I write sometimes thinking, you know, you think the darker side of things, or you're worried about things, or anxiety ridden about things, or you're super scared of things. If I write a story about it, then all the anxiety of that goes away. And I'm just in it. And then you can kind of like I said earlier, if you write a hard story, you can kind of hold somebody's hand while they're going through it. And somehow, you know, it's always comforted me, even as a kid, when I started writing stories. If I wrote a story about a kid that was more beat up than me, then I just felt like, oh, well, I'm not alone. I'm with this kid and he's more beat up than me and he's doing all right. So I guess it doesn't seem that hard when I'm doing it. Like it doesn't seem dark at all until I step back but you know, I am the way I am, I guess.
Let's see.
Okay, let's well, that was beautiful. Let's we're glad you are the way you are, because the way you are, we've got these wonderful books, these wonderful characters, and let's get some questions, and then we're going to go over 3 o'clock by a little bit. But where's anybody going? All right, Chris, Lainey, you want to read some questions, some comments, and
yeah, there's so much love, and so many people are so excited to hear from you. So Janet Lockhart says, Lynette has so much to manage just to get through each day. I was exhausted just reading about it and realized how easy my life was in comparison. What do you think would be the most helpful to the Lynettes of our country?
Oh, geez, that's hard. I mean, I think Lynette's doing, you know that Lynette's, she has a mission, I guess. She really wants to make sure her family's okay. And I think when you're that age too, you have the energy, you still think there's possibilities. You're in the middle of your big fight. You haven't kind of caved in like her mother has. Oh, I wish I knew the answer to that for the Lynettes of the world. I don't know. I think she's done the best she can. She's gotten help for her problems, or she's trying to, and I allude to it. You just hope they get a break.
Let's see, Maureen Roberts asks, was it challenging to write a novel set over the course of 2 days? Was this the first time you'd created such a compact timeline?
Yeah, I did write a whole other half of the book where Lynette's life afterwards. But I spent a year on that a year and a half. It was like the bad relationship book where I couldn't get out of it. Because the heart of the book was always over the course of 2 days. And I wanted that. I wanted like a really intense, fast read that kind of punched you in the gut, but hopefully talked about important things. But it was at the same time a ride. And you almost would forget about the social implications that were going around. And everyone she meets kind of is an example of some kind of low-level greed or opportunism. And one of the ideas I was thinking about was community versus opportunism, and hey, it's all about me versus about community. And I think Lynette represents community. She sees the value in community, where a lot of the people are just grabbing for the boomtown that's happening right now.
Todd Kruger says, I would happily listen to both of today's authors read their books, even if they're not professional audiobook narrators. I agree. Give me a blanket and a pillow and you guys could just read your books. They're fabulous.
Yeah, I love audiobooks. You know, I'm kind of an insomniac. And so, and because I tour so much, or used to anyway, I listen to a ton of audiobooks. So I've always been a big fan.
Chris, Laney, read more questions?
Let's see. So Lillian Dabney asks, had you considered writing the book in first person from Lynette's point of view? She said she was drawn in even more with a third person narrative the way it is now.
You know, I don't know. You know, I never thought that. I felt, I think I would be, I don't know if I'd have the confidence to write a woman first person. I haven't written first person since Lean on Pete, and it used to be the easiest thing for me and really fun. But with Lynette, I wanted a little more distance, I think. But yeah, I haven't, you know, I'm working on a new book that's in third person too. So I don't know when I'll get back to first person.
Do we have any more questions, Lainey? We got to all of them.
I think so. I think we're
Janet Block.
Donna Wilder, my friend Donna Wilder. What's that question there? At the education system.
Let's see. Oh, so what is it about the education system that doesn't recognize genius and instead deems our greatest talents unremarkable? You have thoughts on the education system, Willie?
Well, you know, I will say this. I've gotten lucky because of writing books to go to really kind of fancy schools and really nice schools. And you see the difference of education, like when there's money involved and class sizes are small. And so the beat up shy kid gets paid attention to. And the people that aren't interested, the kids that are having rough home lives get paid more attention to. So I've always, you know, I've always been a huge believer in public education, and I think if there's so many beat up kids, I think you need to have class sizes smaller and more care given to them. But you know, I've always been I think the only thing that'll get out of all the messes we get ourselves into is education. So I think we got to double down there. And you know, a couple of my buddies are teachers, and they say that each year it seems like they become more and more caregivers and parents than teachers.
Yeah. Janet Lockhart says she was fighting back tears. What a beautiful description of how stories heal. And Kimberly McGee says your characters stay in our soul, and that is true. And with that, I think now might be time for us to have a treat. Willie?
Oh, you want me to try my? Well, this is the first time I don't think I've played this song for anybody actually. So it's just a little ballad. I tend to do this because, you know, writing fiction takes so long. I mean, you just spend years kind of beating your head against a wall. So I always have a guitar laying around, and there'll be certain days where maybe I just put Lynette through something too much, and or you start thinking about her, and I wrote this song. All right, so you can see my guitar. I'll give it a shot. thought there'd come a time when I'd stop waking up lonely. Every morning, just before I open up my eyes, I'm certain that I've escaped. Doesn't matter who I wake up next to. If I sleep 10 hours or only 2, it's there to harm me. Oh, I always thought there'd come a day when I stop waking up lonely.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I like that one. All right.
Thank you. We can't talk.
Yeah, we can go out to lunch now.
You got us crying.
Oh, really? Hey,
Knock it off.
bad one. Jesus, I feel like that most days. But
Jesus.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful writing, beautiful singing, beautiful words spoken and written, and beautiful heart. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, and I love being on Harper, and I'm so excited to get to write books. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me is getting to write books.
Wow, lucky us, lucky you, lucky us, talented you, lucky us. Why don't we bring Andy back, and then
All right.
say,
I'm excited to read his book.
oh yeah, oh you fellas are just gonna, it's gonna be a bromance. I just know it.
Yeah, that's nice.
Oh, it was beautiful. And Lynette's Lament, the beautiful instrumental, well, we put that on an e-card and we're sending that out as well. There'll be more information on librarylovefest.com about another.
Oh yeah, I love that song.
Gorgeous. Jeez.
The trumpet player and keyboard player in my band wrote that tune. And I was like, that's Lynette. And he read the book and thought so too. So
Oh God. All of us, as soon as we heard this song, we said, I just feel like I'm back reading I want to read the book again.
yeah,
So
it's really beautiful.
yeah, we'll put that up on library. We just got it. Thank you, Willie, for getting us that so we could put it up on the site.
The link is actually featured now, so you can listen right after this.
Where is it, Chris? Where?
It's up now. It's the link is up in the screen on Facebook. So it's there. Yeah.
Listen to it when we're done, and trust me, it's just amazing. So hi Andy, were you able to listen?
I was. That was wonderful. Now, Willie, I can't wait to read your latest book. I'm really
me too, man. It's nice to meet you. This is fun.
Yeah.
Well, you're both so wonderful. Now, we just want to make sure that don't forget to go to Edelweiss so that you can look at their individual pages with additional behind the book piece and on Andy's page. And also, if you're interested in having Andy and or Willie together would be amazing at your library. So let them know, let us know. Either way, we will do everything to make that happen because these are wonderful authors and these stories are so great for book clubs, and they're just beautiful. I'm sure there are more quotes and questions and comments on Facebook. So if we haven't gotten to them, Willie and Andy can get your answers to you. But do you have any closing thoughts? I mean, this is our, this is it. This is whatever is in your heart that you all want to say to readers, to librarians, to each other, anything. This is it, because we'll have to log off soon. But
I'm just, I can't, I've always loved visiting libraries. Libraries always been kind of churches to me, my kind of church, and not going to them and visiting them has been a really hard part of hiding out this year. So I'm hoping, things will lighten up and I'll get to come back and visit libraries. So I hope all our tremendous librarians are hanging tough and being safe and staying out of trouble.
Amen.
Yeah.
And thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thanks for the day. This was a lot of fun. Thank you, Chris, Virginia, Lainey. Thank you, Willie. It was nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks you guys. That's very nice.
Thanks for everyone.
Anything that you all want to say before we say goodbye?
Gonna go reread both books right now.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No, you got to read. You got to read the Oxford, Mississippi's Finest. That's what you have to do.
On the list after. That'll come later. I know you grew my list exponentially.
Yeah, Mary Miller would be a good place to start.
Mhm.
Yeah. I just want to thank you both. Yeah, those are you both are gifts to us all. So thank you for doing what you do and for taking the time to be with us and the librarian viewers. It's been a special hour plus. It really has.
Yeah.
It comes through in the comments too. So
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much,
Sure.
both of you. It's been wonderful. What a gift. Thank you for your song. Thank you for your books. Thank you for being you. And we wish you all well. Thank you for watching. And we'll be back. So come back too. We'll keep on talking, and we'll keep on listening. Until then, take good care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.